Hello, my friends. Welcome in. It's been quite some time since we've done a video on the U.S. men's national team and U.S. Soccer Federation in general, and I know half of my European viewers just clicked off because I said soccer, but that's what our federation's called, so deal with it. But yesterday, my friends, the U.S. men's national team enabled Venezuela to have their largest road victory since they beat Aruba in 2011 by the exact same scoreline, 3-0, except this time we let them do it in the first 36 or 37 minutes. This, of course, was on the heels of helping Jamaica win the third game since 1969 by any Caribbean nation, not just Jamaica, against the United States on U.S. soil. The second one was the 2015 Gold Cup semifinal against Jamaica. Thanks, Jurgen. Now, is the U.S. men's national team in crisis? Were these two meaningless friendlies? Was Gregg Berhalter just experimenting? If you're like me and you were watching that game yesterday going like, oh, it keeps getting worse and it's worse than the Jamaica game, it's really easy to point to like your favorite thing to get mad about, whatever that is. It might be the coaching, it might be the federation, it might be all of the players, it might be Will Trapp, it might be Alexi Lawless, whatever it is. But to me, it all comes back to, just like I said in the video that I'm putting up there, it comes back to the federation. I don't think Gregg Berhalter was a bad hire. I think the timing of Gregg Berhalter was a horrific hire because we wasted 14 months to hire. That's my beef. I think he's a fine coach. And we had some comments on that video that we may come back and review in this video, saying that I was essentially a Neanderthal for not being able to see how amazing Gregg Berhalter was. And they missed the point where I said, Gregg's a fine hire if you don't wait 14 months. Instead, for me, all of this comes back to the federation and how it's run. U.S. Soccer took 14 months after the debacle in Trinidad and Tobago to hire the COO's brother, the chief operating officer's brother. Now, you can disagree with how much emphasis to put on the nepotism angle. Okay? I will agree to disagree with you on that. But you cannot dispute they took 14 months to hire a coach with theoretically an amazing tactical mind. 14 months of truly meaningless friendlies that, to me, it is becoming apparent we really needed those games to develop this system that we're running. Now, GHG, you say, those 14 months weren't lost. You're a Neanderthal who can't see that those games were laying the foundation for Gregg's tactics. He runs a 4-2-3-1 with high-pressing wingbacks, and using some of his former players from Columbus means it will work better faster. Wait a minute. Okay. I was kind of on board. Well, the first guy said that. I wasn't a fan. So I actually didn't read that comment when he first posted it until like today. I wasn't a fan because I was providing criticism because fans aren't allowed to criticize. But wait a minute. We're not running a 4-2-3-1 with high pressing wingbacks and a number 6 that sits deep. We're running a 4-1-4-1 where the right back tucks into midfield or like a 3-4-3/3-2-4-1. And we're losing to Jamaica and Venezuela. Now, you could say, well, we drew with Chile's B or C team and we beat some of these other teams and whatever. But the tactical issue remains, and we're trying to transition from being a counterattacking team and relying on, the classic American, we're physical but not very technical, right? That's what's always been thrown against the U.S. men's national team, right? To one that holds possession. Fine. Wouldn't you agree having an extra 14 months to install this new system would have been nice? Because we're not running that 4-2-3-1 with the wingbacks, the pressing wingbacks. We're not. We're starting a center back at left back and a right back / midfielder at right back. Here's how RB Leipzig thinks about that with Tyler Adams. So that, I guess from your perspective, this is the right back. So that the right back tucks inside and that left back that's really a center back, like a Tim Ream, is now we're playing a back 3. That's what we're running. We're not running a 4-2-3-1 with wingbacks that are pushing up high. Maybe U.S. Soccer shouldn't have focused on, quote, understanding the American player and speaking English, and instead interviewed like every other organization that wants to make a significant hire, multiple coaches with outstanding resumes, and hired the best available between 0 and 14 months after that Trinidad and Tobago game. Someone like, I don't know, Tata Martino, who is winning with his Mexican team, including a win over Venezuela, while missing his top 8 or 9 players. Now, okay, hold up. Maybe Tata wasn't interested. He said no one reached out, and as I've learned from the Total Soccer Show, things can be two things, and it might not mean what it means at face value. Just because he says no one reached out doesn't mean there wasn't some sort of communication there, right? No one reached out to me is classic coach speak, right? They didn't reach out to me. Now, they may have talked to my representatives, but they didn't reach out to me, and I could say that they didn't reach out to me. Maybe his representatives told U.S. Soccer to not bother because he had his sights set on something better. We might never know. Maybe in 30 years, someone will put out a book about this period of time in the U.S. Soccer Federation's existence. And maybe we'll learn then, right? So maybe he has sights set on something better. But I think you can kind of see he's not playing with his best available players. He's missing essentially almost the entire starting 11 and winning games. So lest you think I'm focused on Tata and Tata alone, what about the likes of Carlos Queiroz? Now, he wasn't available at the time, but do you think, and I could be wrong, do you think he spoke perfect Farsi and truly understood the type of player before taking the Iranian national team management job and taking them to 2 World Cups? If you look at his resume, he's got a pretty good win percentage. I'm not saying win percentage is everything, but when you win 38.5% of your games in MLS and in Sweden, that's not ideal. It's just reality. Well, they didn't spend as much money in Colombia. 38 point. Okay. You might argue Jamaica and Venezuela games were just experiments, and I truly hope so. I truly hope so. And I think you could see some of the players we brought in, especially in the Jamaica game, was definitely more of an experimental roster. But even with that, you have to think that at some point in U.S. soccer's history, with the men's team, they've done some experimenting in some of these types of games, right? These meaningless friendlies. And so with that, we still lost our 3rd ever game to a Caribbean team. I think even with that, there's less excuse, if you buy the experimenting line, I suppose, that there's less excuse against Venezuela because it was a more normal looking roster. Now, you could make the argument we are missing out on 4.5 starters out of 11, which is a pretty significant ratio, right? Michael Bradley, who I think if you disliked Michael Bradley in World Cup qualifying, I hope you're ready to apologize because he is a significant upgrade over Will Trapp. Tyler Adams is missing, and again, RB Leipzig was like, "Congrats, Tyler, on getting called up as a defender?" ? Christian Pulisic, good luck at Chelsea with now no manager, theoretically, because he's going to go to Juventus. John Brooks out with an injury, and then, of course, starting Altidore as the half. Right? You bring him in the second half if you start him. Right now, coming back from injury and all that kind of stuff, right? But let's say these were experimental games. Me personally, I don't hold any coaching badges, so, I know nothing. I'm just a fan, right? But if you're going to experiment, I think you can do it 2 different ways. You can say, here's the system we run. It's the same system we've run in the last several games. Let's put new players in it. Or, here's a new modified system. Let's put our normal players in that. So essentially, same players of the old system in a new system, or new players in the old system. Doing both at the same time is, as we've learned, hopefully, a bit risky. When you fiddle and experiment too much, and it goes wrong, very wrong. I think you have to admit it went very wrong, despite the fact that Gregg Berhalter said after the 3-0 loss, we need to be calm. I think you have to own up to that as a coach, to say, we brought in some players that were on the fringe, and they weren't good enough, or I shouldn't have tinkered so much with the system. Instead, what does he do? After the Jamaica game, he throws those guys under the bus, which I guess is something I just said, but maybe it's just how he did it. But he said that the pressure of the Gold Cup roster announcement got to some of the guys. Good grief, if players are that mentally fragile that they can't handle potentially making or not making the Gold Cup roster, not to mention, World Cup qualifying. We should just shut it down now. That to me sounded like, it could be both things, right? Two things could be two things. It could be a cop-out and saying like, I don't want to say that I shouldn't have done what I did from a tactical standpoint, but I shouldn't have done what I did from a tactical standpoint. And it could also be at the same time, like, those guys aren't good enough, and that's my way of saying that, but that's just not a good look. If you're going to experiment, I think personally, you need to set proper fan expectations. Now, some of you will disagree with me on this. Hi, Matthew Reynolds, who thinks I'm not a fan, because, the Federation doesn't owe fans anything. It's not like fans, buy tickets or support the team or travel. Anyway, but if you're trying to build up a program, which obviously the U.S. is not winning anything right now, we are in the rebuilding mode, you can't say that these two games are the kickoff series or the warm-up games for our amazing potential Gold Cup run and then do what you did, right? So a few things about this that I loved. First, I hope you saw this. Fox ran a promo for their Gold Cup coverage. I think it was either at halftime, or maybe in the transition from halftime to the second half, or early. It must have been the transition from halftime to the second half, because they wouldn't have done it in the middle of the second half. So it was, because it was full screen, whatever. So right at the end of halftime, going to the second half, I just thought this promo was absolutely hilarious. It was like Fox had nothing prepared. Like they didn't have another version of this promo that was prepared for us to lose not one, but two games, and to do this in the middle of the second game where you're getting your face punched in the first half 3-0. The promo was all like, you're building like dramatic sounding movie music about the new attitude, new look U.S. men's national team and beginning their defense of the Gold Cup. And then it said, I think if I'm remembering correctly, it said, beginning their defense of the Gold Cup, our Gold Cup. And it showed the team jumping with Michael Bradley holding the trophy and whatever. I'd love to have seen the face of the producer who was like, yeah, I mean, we got to run the promo. New look, new attitude after this 1.5 games. Just run the promo. Just run it. If other folks you likely respect the opinion of more than me that had other things to say about this. American Outlaws, I don't know, official supporters group of the U.S. men's national team and U.S. women's national team, said it was awful. Matt Doyle pointed out, Matt Doyle, if you don't know, is like Mr. MLS, MLSsoccer.com, great writer, whatever, pointed out that Will Trapp had 4 measurable defensive actions in 67 minutes. And remember, that guy knows the system. Matt also said Adams not in midfield. Obviously, he didn't play in these games, but like this is where he's anticipated to play, is in the right back slot and then be the guy that slides in the midfield, is essentially a bad idea. Stu Holden, who called those games and is generally positive, I mean, he kind of has to be, he's the commentator on the game, wasn't exactly sunshine and rainbows. Max Bredos, who used to be on SportsCenter here in the U.S. and is now with LAFC, nails home the point that out of sight, out of mind for the American public is a killer. Like he's saying that like U.S. men's national team highlights used to be something you could put on SportsCenter and like, boom, it was on. And now, they've got various blocks, like letter blocks. He's saying it wouldn't make the E block, which is kind of towards the end would be my guess. And that is a killer if you're trying to build up a program. Scuffed, who does amazing deep dives on U.S. senior and youth teams, had a GIF there, or a GIF if you say it correctly, about hitting the panic button. And of course, my beloved Total Soccer Show said at 34 minutes, their eyes were bleeding and they hate everything. In short, this version of the U.S. men's national team earned the fans booing them as they left the field in both games. At the end of the day, is everything as bad as it seems? Is the sky falling? Is U.S. soccer truly doomed? Maybe. I just don't think they've done themselves any favors. There's that phrase, things are never as good or as bad as they seem, and I think that's true here as well. We did have 4.5 at least starters out. But I think what we learned is that our backups, those guys that are 1 or 2 injuries away from playing, couldn't execute this amazing tactical plan. And I bet they'd appreciate an extra year's worth of meaningless friendlies to understand it better. I'm always open to hearing from you in the comments. I love getting that interaction from the community. I do want to point out that if you're rude, or if you can't agree to disagree, or you just think, well, you're an idiot, that's not very constructive. I'm open to having a conversation if you disagree. If you think being critical of US soccer or the US men's national team or whatever in this video makes me not a fan, don't bother commenting because I'll just delete it. But if you agree or disagree and can leave a comment to have a conversation, let's do that. Hit that like button. We'll see you next time. Hopefully the Gold Cup is better. Maybe that's what we're doing. We'll play really badly and then surprise Guyana because, ooh. Have a good one.